Section 13 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 13. The Seventh Circle, the Second Ring. Violence against oneself. Suicides and squanderers.
Not yet had Nessus reached the other side, when we had set our steps within a wood, which was not marked by any path whatever. No green leaves there, but leaves of gloomy hue; no smooth and straight, but gnarled and twisted twigs; nor was there any fruit, but poison thorns. No thickets rough and dense as these are owned by those wild beasts that hate the tilled estates that lie between the Cecina and Corneto. Herein those ugly harpies make their nest, who drove the Trojans from the Strophides, with gloomy prophecies of future loss. Wide wings they have, and human necks and faces; their feet are clawed, and feathered their great bellies. They utter wailings on the uncouth trees. My kindly teacher then began to say,
Before thou enter any further, know that in the second ring thou art, and wilt be until thou reach the horrid plain of sand. Hence look around thee well, and things thou'lt see that from my words would take away belief.
Moans I heard uttered upon every side, but saw no person who might make them there. Hence, utterly confused, I checked my steps. I think he thought I thought that all those voices were uttered from among those thorny trunks by people hiding there on our account. The teacher therefore said,
If thou break off a little twig from any of these trees, the thoughts thou hast will all be proven false.
I then stretched out my hand a little way, and from a sturdy thorn tree plucked a twig, whereat its trunk cried out,
Why dost thou rend me?
Then, after growing dark with blood, its cry began again.
Why dost thou break me off? Hast thou no spirit of compassion in thee? Men we were once, and now our stocks become. Thy hand ought surely to have more pity, even if the souls of serpents we had been.
As from a fresh green log that at one end is being burned, and at the other drips and makes a hissing with the escaping air, so from the broken twig together issued both words and blood. I therefore dropped the end and stood dumbfounded like a man who fears.
Had he before been able to believe, O wounded soul?
Replied my sage to him,
What in my verses only he has seen, he had not set his hand on thee, whereas the thing's incredibility has made me lead him to do what I myself regret. But tell him who thou wast, that he, by way of compensation, may refresh thy fame up in the world, where he can still return.
The trunk.
With sweet words thou dost entice me, that I cannot keep still. Be not annoyed if I am tempted to a little talk. I am the man who once held both the keys of Frederick's heart, and he who turned them round so gently, locking and unlocking it, that most men from his secrets I withheld. So faithful was I to my glorious charge, that for its sake I lost both sleep and strength. The courtesan who never turned away her harlot eyes from Caesar's dwelling place, a common form of death and vice of courts, gainst me inflamed the minds of every one, and those on fire inflamed Augustus so that my glad honours turned to wretched grief. My mind, to vent its feelings of disdain and thinking to avoid disdain by death, made me unjust against myself, the just. By this tree's uncouth roots I swear to you, I never broke the faith I owed my lord, who so deserving was of reverence. And to the world should one of you return, let him assist my memory, which still lies crushed beneath the blow which envy gave it.
A while he waited, then the poet said,
Since he is still, lose not thy chance, but speak and ask him other questions if thou like.
Whence I to him, Ask thou again whate'er thou thinkest satisfactory to me, for I could not, such pity stirs my heart. Hence he began again.
So may this man do freely for thee what thy words request, imprisoned spirit. May it please thee still to tell us how within these knotted trunks a soul is bound. And tell us, if thou canst, if any from such limbs is ever freed.
Thereat the trunk blew hard, and afterward that wind was changed into the following words.
Briefly shall a reply be made to you. Whenever a wild spirit leaves the body, from which itself hath torn itself away, Minos commits it to the seventh ravine. Into the woods it falls, nor is a place allotted to it, but where fortune hurls it, there like a grain of sped it germinates. It grows into a sapling and wild tree. The harpies, feeding then upon its leaves, cause pain to it, and for the pain a vent. Like other spirits for our spoils will come, though not that any be reclothed therewith, for 'tis not right to have what one casts off. We'll drag them with us here, and then our bodies will all around the dismal wood be hung, each on the thorn tree of its hostile shade.
We still were giving heed unto the trunk, believing that it wished to tell us more, when we were startled by a sudden noise, as likewise he is who perceives a boar and pack of hounds approach his hunting post, and hears the crashing of the beasts and boughs. And lo, two on the left, who naked were and scratched, and fled away so rapidly they shattered all the branches of the wood. The one ahead,
"Now hurry, hurry, Death!"
and the other one, who thought himself too slow, cried,
Lano, not so knowing were thy legs, when running from Del Topo's battle jousts.
And then, perhaps because of failing breath, he there made of himself and of a bush a group. The wood behind these two was full of swarthy bitches, ravenous and fleet as greyhounds are when from their chains unleashed. Into the one who crouched they set their teeth, and tore him into pieces bit by bit. They then made off with those his suffering limbs. Thereat my escort took me by the hand, and led me to the bush, which all in vain out of its bleeding rents was shedding tears.
O Giacomo,
It said,
the son Andrea, what boots it thee to make a screen of me? And how am I to blame for thy bad life?
when over him my teacher stopped, he said,
Who then wast thou, that through so many gashes art blowing forth with blood such painful speech?
and he to us,
O spirits that have come in time to see the unbecoming havoc, which from me thus hath torn away my leaves, collect them at the foot of my sad bush. I to that town belonged which for the Baptist changed its first patron, wherefore he, for this, will always make her mournful with his art. And were it not that on the Arno's bridge there lingers still some little glimpse of him, those townsmen who rebuilt her afterward, over the ashes left by Attila, had caused that work to be performed in vain, I made myself a gibbet of my house.
End of Inferno, Canto 13. Section 14 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 14. The Seventh Circle, the Third Ring. Violence against God. Blasphemers.
Since love for my own native place constrained me, I gathered up the scattered twigs and leaves, and gave them back to him who now was weak. Thence to the bound we came, where from the third the second ring is severed, and wherein a frightful form of justice may be seen. To manifest aright what here was new, I say that we had reached a barren plain, which from its bed removeth every plant. The woeful wood is as a garland round it, as round the former is the dismal moat. There on its very edge we stayed our steps. Its soil was of a dense and arid sand, whose nature differed in no way from that which once was trodden by the feet of Cato. Vengeance of God, how much by every one thou oughtest to be feared, who readeth here what to these eyes of mine was manifest. Of naked souls I many flocks beheld, who all wept very sorely, while on each a different law appeared to be imposed. A few lay on the ground upon their backs, and some were seated cuddled up together, while others moved about continually. Most numerous were those that moved around, and least so those that under torment lay, but all the freer had their tongues to wail. Down on the whole great waste of sand there rained with gentle fall dilated flakes of fire, like flakes of snow that fall on windless Alps. As were the flames which Alexander saw in India's torrid regions, as they fell upon his hosts, unbroken to the ground. And this he met by ordering his troops to trample on the soil, because the flames when single were more easily put out. Even such descended here the eternal heat, whereby the sand was set on fire, as tinder is kindled under steel, to double pain. And ever without resting was the dance of wretched hands, that kept now here, now there, slapping away each latest burning flake. "Thou, teacher," I began, "that conquerest all, except the stubborn devils who came out against us at the entrance of the gate, who is that great one who seems not to mind the fire, but lies there scornful and awry, so that the rain seems not to ripen him?" And that same one, who had observed that I concerning him was questioning my leader, cried,
"As I was alive, such am I dead. Is Jove should tire that smith of his, from whom in wrath he took the pointed thunderbolt, wherein I smitten was that final day, or should he tire the others, each in turn, in Mungio bellows smithy black with smoke, by calling out, 'Help, help, good Vulcan, help!' even as he did on Phlegas' battlefield, and should he shoot at me with all his might, no glad revenge would he obtain thereby."
Thereat my leader spoke with so much force that I had never heard him use the like.
In that thine arrogance, O Capaneus, is not extinguished, art thou all the more chastised. No torment, saving thine own rage, were for thy furious pride a fitting pain.
Then with a gentler mien he turned to me and said,
One of the 7 kings was he who Thebes besieged. He held, and seems to hold, God in disdain, and little seems to prize him. But, as I told him, his own spitefulness is fit enough adornment for his breast. Now follow me, and see that thou meanwhile set not thy feet upon the burning sand, but to the thicket keep them ever close.
In silence we went on, and came to where out of the wood a little stream spurts forth, whose ruddy colour makes me shudder still. As from the Bulicame springs a brook, which afterward the sinful women share, even so went that one down across the sand. Its bottom and both sides had turned to stone, as also had the embankments on each side. I hence perceived the crossing place was there.
Of all the other things which I have shown thee, since first we entered through the outer gate, whose threshold unto no one is denied, nothing has ever by thine eyes been seen as notable as is this present brook, which deadens over itself all little flames.
These were my leader's words. I therefore begged that he would freely grant to me the food, desire of which he had so freely given.
Amid the sea there lies a wasted land,
he told me thereupon,
whose name is Crete, under whose king the world of old was pure. There is a mountain there, which, happy once with waters and green leaves, was Ida called. 'Tis now abandoned like a thing outworn. Whilom, as trusty cradle for her son Rhea selected it, and when he wept, to hide him better, caused a shouting there. Within that mountain stands a great old man, who holds his shoulders toward Damiata turned, and who, as at his mirror, looks at Rome. His head is formed of finest gold, his arms and breast are of the purest silver, then, as far as to his loins, he is made of brass. All chosen iron is he down from there, save that baked clay his right foot is, and straighter he stands on that than on the other foot. Each of these parts, except the golden one, is broken by a cleft, whence trickle tears, which, when collected, perforate that cave. From rock to rock they course into this vale. Then Acheron with Styx and Phlegethon they form, and through this narrow duct descend as far as where one goes no further down. They form Cocytus there, and what that pool is like thou'lt see, hence here it is not told.
And I to him, If thus this present stream has from our world descended, why alone on this ring's edge hath it appeared to us? And he,
Thou knowest that the place is round, and though a long way thou hast gone already, ere to the left descending toward the bottom, through the whole circle thou hast not yet gone. Wherefore, if aught that's new appear to us, it should not bring amazement to thy face.
and I again, But where are Phlegethon and Lethe, teacher? For of this one silent, thou sayest the other of this rain is made. And he replied,
Thou certainly dost please me in all thy questions, but the red stream's boiling ought surely to have answered one of them. Lethe thou'lt see but there, outside this cave, whither souls go to wash themselves, when once their sin, repented of, has been removed.
and then he said,
It is now time for us to leave the wood. See that thou follow me. The banks which are not burned afford a path, and up above them every flame is quenched.
End of Inferno, Canto 14. Section 15 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 15. The Seventh Circle, Third Ring. Violence against Nature. Sodomites.
One of the hard embankments bears us now, and overhead the brook's mist shades them so, that from the fire it saves the stream and banks. Such bulwarks as to keep the sea away the Flemings make between Whitsand and Bruges, through fearing lest the high tide break upon them, and as the Paduans make along the Brenta, their villages and strongholds to defend, ere Chiarentana feel the summer heat. In such a way were those embankments made, although the Master did not make them there so high or thick, whoe'er he may have been. So far we were already from the wood, that I could not have seen just where it was, even had I turned around to look behind, when we a band of spirits met, who came along the bank, each one of whom looked hard at us, as in the evening one is wont to look at people when the moon is new. And toward us they were knitting close their brows, as an old tailor at his needle's eye. When by that gathering I had thus been eyed, one of them, who had recognized me, seizing my garment's hem, exclaimed,
How wonderful!
And I, when toward me he had stretched his arm, fastened upon his roasted face mine eyes, so that, though blistered, it did not prevent mine intellect from recognizing him. And downward having bent my face toward his, I answered him, Are you here, Ser Brunetto? And that one,
O my son, be not displeased should Brunetto Latini a little way turn back with thee, and let the troop go on.
I beg you to, with all my power, said I. And if you'd have me sit with you, I will, if it please that one, for with him I go.
O son,
He said,
whoever of this herd stands still at all lies prone 100 years, nor shields himself when smitten by the fire. Therefore go on, I'll follow at thy skirts, and then I'll join again my company, which goes bewailing its eternal loss.
I dared not from the path descend to go upon his level there, but held my head bowed down like one who walks in reverence. And he began,
What fortune, or what fate, before thy last day, leadeth thee down here? And who is he that showeth thee the way?
I answered him, When in the life serene up yonder, in a vale I lost my way, before my age had rounded out its noon. Thereon I turned my back but yestermorn. This one, as I returned to it, appeared to me, and o'er this path now leads me home. And he to me,
If thine own star thou follow, thou canst not fail to reach a glorious port, if in the lovely life I judged aright. And had I not so prematurely died, I, seeing heaven so well disposed towards thee, had given thee comfort in thy work. But that ungrateful, wicked people, which of old came down from Fiesole, and which e'en now smacks of the mountain and of hard grey stone, for thy well-doing shall become thy foe, and rightly, for among the acid sobs it is not fitting that sweet figs bear fruit. An old fame in the world proclaims them blind, a greedy, envious, overweening folk. See to it that thou cleanse thee from their ways. Thy fortune hath in store for thee such honour, that either party shall be hungry for thee, but distant from the goat shall be the grass. Let then the beasts of Fiesole make litter with their own selves, nor let them touch the plant, if on their dung-heap any perchance still, in which the sacred seed may live again of those old Romans who remained therein when of such wickedness the nest was made.
If perfectly fulfilled had been my prayer, I then replied to him, you had not yet been banished from the natural life of man. For in my mind is fixed, and stirs e'en now my heart, that dear and kind paternal face you showed, when in the world from time to time you taught me how man makes himself eternal. And how much gratitude I feel for this must, while I live, be in my words perceived. What of my course you tell, I write and keep, with other texts, for a lady to explain, who can, if I ever attain to her. I only wish that this be clear to you, that I, if but my conscience chide me not, am ready for whatever fortune wills. Not new unto mine ears is such reward. Hence, as she lists, let fortune turn her wheel, and let the country clown his mattock ply. Thereat my teacher over his right cheek turned back and looked at me, and then he said,
He listens well who giveth heed to this.
Nor speaking less do I, on this account, go on with Ser Brunetto, asking who his fellows were of greatest note and rank, and he to me,
'Tis well to know of some. Our silence on the rest will merit praise, for short the time were for so long a talk. Know then, in brief, that clerics were they all, and mighty men of letters of great fame, soiled by the self-same sin when in the world. And with that sad crowd yonder Priscian goes, and Francis of Accorso too, and him, if thou hadst had a longing for such scurf, thou couldst have seen there, whom the servant changed from the Arno to the Bacchiglione, where he behind him left his ill-strained nerves. I'd speak of more, but I can come and talk no further, for a new dust cloud I see rising o'er yonder from the sandy plain. People with whom I must not be are coming. Let my tesoro, in which I'm still alive, be recommended thee. I ask no more.
Then round he turned, and seemed to be of those who at Verona run across the meadow to win the green cloth, and of these he seemed not he who loses, but the one who wins.
End of Inferno, Canto 15.